Felix, you have brought up the name Dan Quinn many times on the show. Are you talking about the Washington Commanders head coach Dan Quinn?
No.
And what is this person's significance? Thanks. I'll hang up and listen.
Dan Quinn is, I mean, if you thought Chapo being 10 years old next year was scary, I have been following the life of Dan Quinn for 17 years. Like, I have spent so much time on this guy. So, Dan Quinn, I first caught wind of this guy through my fandom in MMA. He was, back in 2008, he would make these, he was this, like, 40-something-year-old Irish guy who had, like, the body that every 40-something Irish guy had. And he would always make these videos shirtless, and he would go, "Do I look like I'm 43?" And he looked the most like a 43-year-old you had ever seen. But he claimed that the key to his longevity, his athleticism, his shreddedness, he would most frequently claim that he was as fast or faster than just in general, like black people, he would say. Like he said, you've never seen a white boy catch an outside running back on 4th and inches like me.
We should make clear that it is not Washington Commanders head coach Dan Quinn, but it is still someone very much associated with football, at least at Notre Dame.
So he says that by using the natural sweetener, sugar replacement, stevia, and mixing it with weed, or putting it in a blender with water to blend out what he called the toxic floating soap, and then mixing it with weed to make something he called weed 2.0, or just drinking the stuff in the blender, which is called pure H2O. He would melt fat off his body, increase his cardio. It was like smoking meth, but healthy and with no withdrawals. And it enabled him to, he thought, like, completely destroy any of the current MMA champions circa 2008, as long as he could fight them in MMA in a rule set where there were no kicks or takedowns. So just boxing, you would say. But
didn't he say he cured his mom's dog's cancer with stevia?
Well, yes, he claims that he brought Peachy the cat back from the dead.
Okay, the cat.
And Dan Quinn, his mom, cured it by giving it regular water. He also claimed to have invented an oral sex technique called the violin that could provide triple-digit orgasms. He did offer the caveat in his first video ever, where he said it only causes triple-digit orgasms in abuse victims, but when the woman has not endured abuse in her life, they have to go to the hospital, which is something that people often forget. He's like he's probably like the first internet freak I got really obsessed with. Part of that is because some of the funniest posts I've ever read in my entire life to this day are about Dan Quinn. He has a really, like, surprisingly poetic way of speaking. He has a really interesting syntax that I think is hilarious and I've been obsessed with for so long. And he would also give out his number so you could call him. I called him several times when I was a teenager. And you just kind of have to type in Dan Quinn Stevia fan into YouTube and you'll see what I'm talking about. He just has his way of describing his life is so idiosyncratic. Like, part of his self-mythology is that he was like a super respected criminal / football player / boxer / like white guy that all minorities loved. And in one of my favorite videos called Stories from My Life, and he starts out the video amazingly. He says, "These are stories for people who think I'm anything less than a gallant knight on a quest." And he says that in one of his stories, he describes how one of his best friends was, in his words, Mark Brannon, a.k.a. Mel Gibson from Tequila Sunrise. He loves calling people like the real version of like this character from this movie from 1987 that like no one remembers. Tequila Sunrise being one of them. But he's just, he's, I have a friend from Northern California, where Dan is from, of course, who actually went to a stevia validation ceremony, which, if you don't know what that is, it is a ceremony where Dan would sit in the middle of a Vagos clubhouse, Vagos being a motorcycle gang he was affiliated with, blending Stevia, well, bikers just meandered about and sometimes rode in circles around him on their bikes. I guess the term is like lolcow now, and it just describes someone who like is shockingly young to be on SSI and has like some horrible disability. But internet freak, it really used to mean someone with like a very special mind in my day, and I don't consider the near. I think over like half my life watching Dan Quinn wasted time at all. And as far as like limited series that will never get made, I could do 100 hours of content about his life. I won't. I will never do that. But he is a foundational guy to me. And one of my favorite observations ever made on this show was Matt Christman's amazing appraisal of the 2020 election, that it was Dan Quinn versus Demonius X. Demonius being my other favorite internet freak, with Demonius being Donald Trump and Dan Quinn, of course, being Joe Biden.
I think the thing about Dan Quinn is like to be a figure of this kind of fascination, there needs to be an astounding amount of lore that you just keep uncovering. And also you need to be genuinely funny, not just to laugh at. And Dan Quinn is genuinely funny.
Yeah.
Like, Felix, my favorite video with Dan Quinn is the one where he's in like a Burger King or a Subway bathroom and he's recording, like he's pointing his phone at the mirror, monologuing. And then someone knocks on the door and he says, "No, I'm busy."
Yeah. There's so many Dan Quinn phrases that have like seeped their way into the minds of everyone I know. Like Demonius X is more popular with my family. My immediate family loves Demonius way more. To this day,
Grandma Biederman's always telling Demonius stories.
I would not show her Demonius. That's like too much for a 105-year-old person. But for my mom will still say it felt wonderful, like how when Demonius goes, "I came in my condom, it felt wonderful." But for people on the show, we say so many Dan things, sometimes not even realizing it. One of my favorite Dan phrases that has become a favorite of Matt's is "genetic bitch."
Yeah.
Genetic bitch is so good. He's kind of a genius. He's sort of like in another universe, he would have been like our times James Joyce.
I mean, yeah. I mean, his phraseology has infected so much of my daily life. Like I'm constantly referring to myself as a white.
I know that we had done an episode where we dived more fully into the Dan Quinn lore previously. I just had to scroll through like 800 episodes on SoundCloud because I remember the thumbnail, but not the title of it. If you would like to know more, episode 196, Crazy Joe's Folly, I believe contains a lot of
crazy. Oh, that's another great Dan Quinn line. Crazy Joe's Folly, and then
I believe that episode contains a lot more Quinn lore.
One of the cast off lines that he like, just the names that he references of people in his life, and when the phrase that will always stick with me is "Speak on it, Chet Zawala."
Yeah,
Chet Zawala being a man that he knows, and he says, "Speak on it, Chet Zawala."
That's the other great thing about him. Like it wouldn't be as fun if he was just like completely bullshitting, if everything was made up. But the thing that like truly made Dan Quinn obsession worthy for me was the fact that like you would think like no one is fucking named Chet Zawalik, and then you would look it up, and not only was Chet Zawalik real, but he had the job that Dan Quinn said he did. There was an article from Notre Dame's like student paper from when Dan Quinn went to school there. Him getting kicked out of Notre Dame is a huge part of his mythology. And there's an article about him winning a boxing tournament that is like written in the same like stupid like early 80s like white street tough slang that Dan uses. It's so much of it is real, and that's what makes it so amazing. He feels like he bends reality around his unique command of language.